July 1518, Strasbourg, Alsace. Now part of France, then part of the Holy Roman Empire. A woman named Frau Troffea walks into the narrow street outside her home and begins to dance. Not celebratory dancing, not joyful dancing, desperate, frenzied, uncontrollable dancing. She dances for hours. Her husband tries to stop her. She can't stop. She doesn't want to be dancing. She's begging for help while her body keeps moving. She dances through the day, into the night, through the next day. For 6 days straight, she dances. By day 4, her feet are bleeding. By day 6, she's still dancing. And then others start dancing. Within a week, 34 people are dancing in the streets. Uncontrollably. They can't stop. Within a month, the number reaches 400. They dance until they collapse from exhaustion. Then they get back up and dance more. Their feet bleed. Their bodies break. Some have heart attacks. Some have strokes. Some simply dance until they die. The city authorities, desperate to help, do something that seems insane. They build a stage. They hire musicians. They encourage more dancing, believing it will cure the affliction faster. It makes it worse. This is the dancing plague of 1518, a mass psychogenic illness that affected hundreds of people, killed dozens, and has never been adequately explained. This isn't folklore. This is documented in city records, physician notes, and contemporary chronicles. And we still don't know what caused it. To understand why the dancing plague is so disturbing, you need to understand what life was like in Strasbourg in 1518. The city was suffering. Famine had struck the region. Grain harvests had failed. People were starving. Diseases associated with malnutrition were everywhere. Syphilis was spreading through the population. Smallpox outbreaks were common. The population was traumatized, desperate. Many believed they were living through the end times, that God was punishing them. Into this suffering, on a hot July day, Frau Troffea began dancing. The historical records are specific. Her name was Frau Troffea. She lived on one of Strasbourg's narrow streets. She began dancing alone. She danced continuously for days. Contemporary physician notes describe her condition: uncontrollable movement, inability to stop, visible distress, bleeding feet, exhaustion that didn't stop the dancing. Her husband called for help. Authorities noticed. Physicians examined her, and they couldn't explain it. Then it spread. Within days, more people started dancing. Not near Frau Troffea, scattered across the city, different streets, different neighborhoods, but the symptoms were identical: uncontrollable dancing, hours, days, begging to stop but unable to, bleeding feet, exhaustion, collapse, then getting up to dance more. The victims weren't celebrating. Historical records are clear about this. They were suffering. They were terrified. They were dancing against their will. Witnesses described their faces as anguished, their movements as frenzied rather than joyful. Some were screaming while dancing, begging for mercy, praying, crying, but they couldn't stop. By the end of July, around 100 people were dancing. The city was in crisis. This wasn't a few isolated cases. This was an epidemic. City council records document the crisis meetings. They needed a solution, fast. The physicians were consulted. They determined, based on medieval medical theory, that the dancing was caused by hot blood. The cure, they believed, was to let the affliction run its course, to dance it out. So the city authorities made a decision that seems insane to modern eyes. They would encourage the dancing. The city built wooden stages in public spaces. They hired professional musicians, pipers, drummers, horn players. They hired professional dancers to demonstrate proper technique. The logic was medieval but internally consistent. If hot blood caused the dancing, then dancing would burn the hot blood away faster. More dancing equals faster cure. They were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. With music and encouragement, more people started dancing. The affliction spread. By mid-August, approximately 400 people were dancing in the streets of Strasbourg. 400 people, all dancing, all unable to stop. Many bleeding, many collapsing, many dying. The historical records document deaths. The numbers vary by source, but most historians agree at least 15 people died directly from the dancing. Some sources suggest the number was much higher, possibly dozens. They died from heart attacks, strokes, exhaustion, dehydration. The human body isn't meant to dance continuously for days or weeks. The city chronicles describe streets filled with dancers. The sound of music and screaming, the smell of blood and sweat, bodies collapsing, being carried away, then dragging themselves back to dance more. Strasbourg had become a nightmare. After 2 months of horror, the authorities finally tried something different. They shut down the stages, banned the music, forbade public dancing, and they turned to religion. Saint Vitus was the patron saint of dancers and epileptics. Medieval Christians believed Saint Vitus could cure uncontrollable movement disorders. The authorities organized a pilgrimage to the shrine of Saint Vitus at Saverne, a nearby town. They took the afflicted dancers there, made them pray, held religious ceremonies, and slowly, over the course of September, the dancing stopped. Was it the religious intervention? Was it exhaustion? Had the mass psychosis simply run its course? We don't know. But by early autumn 1518, the dancing plague had ended as mysteriously as it began. Frau Troffea, the first victim, disappeared from historical records after the initial outbreak. We don't know if she survived. We don't know if she recovered. She becomes a footnote in her own plague. So what caused the dancing plague of 1518? Historians and medical researchers have debated this for centuries. Every theory has some evidence and significant problems. Theory 1. Ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on ryegrain. It contains chemicals similar to LSD. Ergot poisoning can cause convulsions, hallucinations, and uncontrolled movements. Evidence 4. There was famine. People were eating contaminated grain. Ergot poisoning was common in medieval Europe. It could explain the uncontrolled movement. Evidence against ergot poisoning causes violent convulsions, not rhythmic dancing. It doesn't last for weeks. The symptoms don't match historical descriptions. And ergot poisoning affects everyone who eats contaminated grain, not selective individuals across a city. Theory 2. Mass psychogenic illness. This is a real psychological phenomenon where stress and suggestion cause physical symptoms to spread through a population. Also called mass hysteria, though that term is outdated. Evidence 4. The population was severely stressed. Famine, disease, religious anxiety. Mass psychogenic illness spreads through observation and suggestion, which matches how the plague spread. It affects vulnerable populations under extreme stress. Modern cases exist, like the Tanzania laughing epidemic of 1962, where laughter spread uncontrollably through schools for months. Evidence against mass psychogenic illness typically doesn't last this long or cause this many deaths. The physical damage, bleeding feet, exhaustion deaths suggests something more than purely psychological, and medieval people were used to hardship. Why this specific response? Theory 3. Religious ecstasy and cultural belief. Medieval Europeans believed Saint Vitus could curse people with uncontrollable dancing as punishment for sin. There were other dancing manias in medieval Europe. Strasbourg had experienced a smaller dancing plague in 1374. The cultural belief was real. If you angered Saint Vitus, you would dance until you died. Evidence for this explains why dancing specifically. Why not other symptoms? Because the culture expected dancing as divine punishment. The victims believed they were cursed, so their bodies manifested the curse. The religious cure worked because it addressed the cultural belief. Evidence against belief alone causing physical exhaustion deaths seems extreme. And not everyone in Strasbourg believed in Saint Vitus curses. Why weren't skeptics immune? Theory 4. Intentional dancing to cope with trauma. Some historians suggest the dancers were making a choice. A desperate, irrational choice, but a choice. That continuous dancing was a form of dissociation, an escape from unbearable reality. Evidence for the population was traumatized. Sometimes people under extreme stress do irrational things that make sense to them. The dancing could have been a form of communal breakdown. Evidence against the historical descriptions emphasize that dancers wanted to stop and couldn't. They weren't escaping into bliss. They were suffering while dancing. The truth? Probably a combination. Extreme stress, cultural beliefs about dancing curses, mass psychogenic illness, possibly some ergot contamination, all creating a perfect storm of psychological and physical breakdown. But we'll never know for certain. What makes the dancing plague uniquely disturbing is how well it's documented. This isn't a vague legend. We have names, Frau Troffea. We have dates, July through September 1518. We have locations, specific streets in Strasbourg. We have city council records detailing their response, physician notes describing symptoms, contemporary chronicles from multiple sources. The Strasbourg City Archives contain documents about the stages they built, the musicians they hired, the costs involved, bureaucratic records of a city trying to manage an impossible crisis. Sebastian Brandt, a famous writer living in Strasbourg at the time, mentioned the plague in his writings. Physician Paracelsus wrote about it years later. Multiple independent sources confirmed the basic facts. This happened. Hundreds of people danced uncontrollably for months. Dozens died. A city watched in horror as its population danced itself to death. And the authorities' solution was to build stages and hire musicians. The dancing plague of 1518 wasn't unique. It was just the best documented. There were dancing manias throughout medieval Europe. 1374 saw dancing plagues in multiple cities along the Rhine. 1463 in Strasbourg again. 1518 was the most severe and best recorded. After 1518, dancing plagues continued sporadically into the 17th century. Then they stopped. Why? We don't know that either. Maybe cultural beliefs changed. Maybe physicians learned to treat them differently. Maybe the specific combination of stresses that triggered them became less common. Or maybe they still happen, but we call them something else now. Mass psychogenic illness still occurs. Modern examples include mystery illnesses that spread through schools, factories, convents. The symptoms change based on cultural context, but the underlying phenomenon remains. We just don't dance anymore. We have different culturally acceptable symptoms. Today, you can visit Strasbourg, walk the narrow medieval streets where people dance themselves to death. The city is beautiful, picturesque. The dark summer of 1518 has been mostly forgotten by tourists, but the historical records remain in the city archives, in medical journals, in chronicles and letters from the period. 400 people dancing for weeks, until their feet bled, until they collapsed, until some of them died, and the city's solution was to encourage them to dance more. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most disturbing medical mysteries. Not because we don't have theories, we have many theories. Each partially explains what happened, but because none of them fully explain why it happened. Why dancing? Why Strasbourg? Why then? Why did it stop? The human mind and body can break in ways we still don't fully understand. Stress, belief, suggestion, and physiology can combine to create symptoms that seem impossible. 400 people danced against their will. They begged to stop. They couldn't. Many of them died dancing. This is documented fact. This happened July through September 1518, Strasbourg, the dancing plague, when an entire city lost control of their bodies and danced toward death. We've learned a lot about psychology and neurology since 1518. We understand mass psychogenic illness better. We have treatments for stress disorders. We know ergot poisoning when we see it. But we still can't fully explain the dancing plague. We can theorize. We can suggest contributing factors. But the complete answer eludes us. Some medical mysteries stay mysterious, even with modern knowledge, even with excellent documentation. The dancing plague is one of them. Frau Troffea walked into the street one July morning and began to dance. Within 2 months, 400 people joined her. Dozens died, and we still don't know why.